Children, in this video we will discuss types of nerve actions. Nervous actions are of three types. The first ones are the voluntary actions. The second ones are involuntary actions, and the third one are reflex actions. Voluntary actions means the actions which are done by the will or according to the will of a person or an animal or organism. But involuntary actions are the responses to a stimuli without the will of a person or without the will of an animal. Reflex and involuntary both are occurring without the will, without the consensual will of an animal. But the voluntary actions occur only according to the will of a person. So first of all, we'll discuss the voluntary and involuntary actions. Learn the difference only till 10th class. The first parameter for the difference is will. Voluntary actions occur according to the will, and involuntary actions occur without the will of a person. So basically, voluntary actions occur due to our will, due to our consent, but involuntary actions occur on its own without the will of our body. For example, the movement of food, it's an involuntary action. It occurs without our will. Whereas picking up something or picking up this marker and I'm writing on the board, making the structures of the alphabets, that is according to my will. So that is a voluntary action. I'm walking, that is a voluntary action. But my pupil size keep on dilating and inflating or increasing in size due to dim or bright light impact. That is an involuntary action. Heartbeat is an involuntary action. Next, muscles involved. That you have discussed in your previous class, that is 9th class. In case of voluntary actions, the striated muscles are involved, which contract and relax due to or according to the will of a person. Whereas in involuntary, smooth muscles are involved. Third is nature of the organs involved. Or you will simply write the organs involved in the voluntary or involuntary action. Involuntary actions usually external organs are involved. The outer organs like hands, legs, these kind of organs are involved in the voluntary action. For example, I am giving certain gestures during this explanation, and those gestures are according to my will. So those are voluntary actions. Whereas involuntary actions are usually related to visceral organs. Visceral or internal organs. For example, your heartbeat, that is not according to our will. That is related to the internal organ, the visceral organs of our body. The movement of food, the peristaltic movement of food in the food pipe, that is also an involuntary action, and that is related to the internal or visceral organs of our body. Basic difference between voluntary and involuntary actions. Now we will discuss the third type of actions, that is reflex action. Reflect word is taken from a Latin word that is reflector, that means to turn back. What are reflex action? These are the spontaneous, immediate, and involuntary responses. Involuntary means which are not according to the will of a person. Responses to a harmful stimuli. Those spontaneous, quick, immediate, and involuntary responses of our body are referred as reflex actions. For example, pulling back of our hand when we accidentally touch a hot plate. Pulling back our feet when we accidentally put our feet or place our feet over a spine on the road, on the walking road. The pupil enlarges during dim light and the size of the pupil decreases when we enters or when we enter in an area, when we goes in an area where a large amount of light is there. So those actions are known as reflex action. What is the difference between involuntary and reflex action? That we will discuss later on. But the reflex actions are spontaneous, immediate, and involuntary responses of our body to a harmful stimuli. There are certain advantages of reflex action. They prevent the overloading over the brain or over the central nervous system. Protection. These reflex actions provide us protection against the harmful stimuli. Otherwise, our body will get certain defects, get harmed by those stimuli. So that's the benefit of the reflex actions. Reflex actions are of two types. One, spinal reflexes. The reflex actions in which spinal cord plays the part of central nervous system majorly, and the other ones are cerebral reflexes. The reflexes in which brain majorly plays the role of central nervous system. And there's one more question also in your NCERT book. What is the role of brain in spinal reflexes? Sorry, in reflex actions. But directly in spinal reflexes there is no role of brain, but still you can't say or write that. Because brain is somewhat directly or indirectly involved in the reflex action, and brain performs the function of interpretation of the signal. Interpretation of the stimuli, that the intensity of that stimuli is judged by the brain itself. For example, the same hot plate when we touch in winters, that does not much affect our body. But when the same hot plate or same temperature, if we accidentally touch during the summers, that will affect much more. All these impacts are because of brain only. The same fire which we used to avoid during summers, we love that fire during winters. Why? Because our brain adapts to the surroundings. So that is the role of brain, that is the interpretation of the stimuli is done by the brain itself. For example, when we are holding a utensil which contain a hot vegetable or hot soup inside it, then we don't throw it away. Why is it so? Because we know our brain will give us the signal that that is not a good thing to throw these things. These are very useful for us. So that is why, that is the basic reason we don't throw it. Sometimes accidentally we dropped it, but that is not intentionally. That is not voluntarily we do it. So that is the role of brain in the reflex action. Next. Reflex arc. What is a reflex arc? The path by which a reflex action is represented that path is known as the reflex arc. The path by which a reflex action is represented, that is known as reflex arc. The representation of a reflex action in the graphical manner is known as the reflex arc. So the reflex arc involves certain parts. For example, the first part is receptor of the various organs, various sense organs which sense the stimuli. Then through receptors, the signal will goes to the central nervous system for interpretation. That signal will either goes to spinal cord in the spinal reflexes or to the brain in the cerebral reflexes for the interpretation of the harm of that particular stimuli. And then the signal is interpreted by the relay neurons. The response is given to the effector organs like muscles, glands, for the particular secretions, for the particular movement of an organ, so that our body can give a particular response and protect itself from those harmful stimuli. So that is what the reflex arc is all about. Before studying the reflex arc, we'll discuss the difference between reflex action and involuntary action, and after that we'll discuss the difference between reflex action and walking. So before that, what is the difference between the reflex action and involuntary action? The first point, the first parameter on which this difference is based on is nature. Reflex actions are automatic and spontaneous responses to a stimuli, whereas involuntary action are automatic but not spontaneous, or you can say not immediate. They are a bit of slow or continuous actions. Next parameter is relation with stimuli. Reflex actions are responses or actions to a stimuli, whereas involuntary action do not require any stimuli or do not depend on stimuli. Bachcho, the reflex actions are always caused due to a stimuli. They are the response to a stimuli, whereas the involuntary actions do not require any stimuli. The third, controlling organ. Reflex actions are controlled by majorly spinal cord. The interpretation of the reflex action is done by the brain, whereas involuntary actions are controlled by medulla. And medulla is the part of hindbrain. Next, you can write a fourth difference if this difference is asked you as a question of 2 marks. Then the fourth difference you can add an example. But example is not a prominent difference. You can't change these 3 definitions or parameters with this example. So the example must be the fourth point of it. The example of reflex action are pulling back of our hand when we accidentally touch a hot plate, pulling back our feet when we accidentally put our feet or place our feet over a spine walking on a road, or sharp-edged object present on the road. Next, the increase or decrease in the size of pupil, either when we comes in contact of a bright light or dim light object or source. The examples of involuntary actions are swallowing. After swallowing, the peristaltic movement of the alimentary canal is involuntary action. So that is the example of involuntary action. Heartbeat, that is an involuntary action. But the beating of heart, that is also an example of involuntary action. So that is the difference between reflex action and involuntary action. Now we will discuss the difference between reflex action and walking. The first parameter on which we differentiate the reflex action and walking is origin. Reflex actions are inborn or the involuntary inborn actions. That means these actions comes in a person, these actions performed by a person by birth. Whereas walking is acquired after learning, after birth. We used to learn the walking process by holding the finger of a father or mother, whereas reflex actions are inborn action. They present in a person, in the person's body by birth. For example, milking by a newborn. When a newborn comes out of the female's womb, or mother's womb, then that child know how to suck the milk from mother's breast. So that is a reflex action. Whereas walking is taught to that child. So that is the walking is acquired after learning or after the birth by continuous practices, where reflex actions are inborn. The second is control. As we all know, reflex actions are involuntary, or you can say not according to the will of a person. Whereas walking is a voluntary action. It occurs only because of the will of a person. Third is intensity. Their intensity remains same. Intensity means speed, rate at which they occur. You can't change the response of a reflex action. You can't either rapids it up or slows it down. It will remain of the same intensity always. Their intensity remains same, but their intensity can change, or its intensity can change. We can walk very slowly, or we can walk very fast, very swiftly. That depends on us only. Next, value. As we all know, the reflex action has a protective or survival value. They occurs to protect an animal or person from harmful stimuli. So, reflex actions possess protective and survival value. Whereas the walking performs other functions than survival. It may perform a survival, but still that survival is not against a particular stimuli. So that is the basic difference between reflex action and walking. Now we will discuss reflex arc. What is the reflex arc? The path which represents a reflex action is known as a reflex arc. For the representation of reflex arc, we'll discuss an example that when we accidentally touch a hot plate. Let us suppose it is a hot plate, and accidentally our hand will come in contact with it. So the stimuli basically is heat, which is received by the receptor, and the receptor in this case is skin, the thermoreceptors of skin. Then the sensory neurons will take up this signal to the central nervous system, and the part which plays the role in this case of central nervous system is spinal cord. So this part is related to spinal cord, that is central nervous system, and in this reflex action this part is played by spinal cord. So sensory neurons brings up the signal to the central nervous system. Here the interpretation is done, and that interpretation is done by other type of neuron that is known as relay neuron. As we have discussed before, the type of neurons, the sensory neurons are the neurons which takes the signal from the sense organs to the central nervous system. Relay neurons are the neurons which are associated with the central nervous system only, which remain present or which remain inclined towards the central nervous system only and performs the function of interpretation, जांच पड़ताल, diagnosis. Then the third form of neuron, that is motor neuron, will bring back the response to the effector, and in this case the effector is muscle, the bicep and the tricep muscle. As we all know, bache, when we pull back our hand, we do not pull back our hand like this, we immediately pull it back. So when we are pulling it back, this muscle contracts. So this bicep muscle is the effector in this case, which gives the response. What is the response? Pulling back of our hand. So this is the example of reflex arc. This is the diagram which represents reflex arc. These neurons are known as motor neurons. For this reflex arc, you may represent it by the help of a graphical form as well. For example, stimuli. What is the stimuli? Hot plate. That is heat. This stimuli is received by receptors. Receptors are present in skin. Then from those receptors, the signal is reached by the help of sensory neurons to the central nervous system, that is spinal cord. In this case, spinal cord plays the part of central nervous system. In the central nervous system, the neurons which are present are relay neurons. Then after interpretation, the response is sent to the effector by the help of motor neurons. The signal is sent to the effector, and in this case the effector is muscle. After that, effector will give a particular response, and that response is pulling back of our hand away from the heart. So this is the graphical form of a reflex arc, and this is the diagrammatic representation of a reflex arc. This example is a fast spinal reflex. You can write the same example, same form of example if someone asks you what events happen when you accidentally place your feet over a spine while walking on a road. Well, in that case, the stimuli is changed to sharp-edged object. Receptors, same skin, the sensory neuron will bring the signal to the spinal cord. In that case, that example is also spinal reflex example. Then central nervous system, that is spinal cord, interprets the signal by the help of brain indirectly, and then the response is given to the muscles. Which muscle? The thigh muscle, and the muscles contract, and by this we bend our feet. Due to that bending, we move away our feet. That is the response from that spine. In the same way, you can write the example of a cerebral reflex. What is cerebral reflex? The dilating or the expansion of pupil when we go in a bright light or a dim light source or dim light room. If the example is of bright light, what happens when a bright light is fall on your eyes? Then the stimuli is bright light. The receptors are present in the eyes, that is photoreceptors. The sensory neuron will take the signals to the brain. That is the example of a cerebral reflex. So in that case, the central nervous system is placed by brain. From the brain, the motor neurons will gives the signal to the effector. In that case, the muscle, especially the muscles of iris, due to which the response is there. The pupil, in case of bright light, pupil contracts. The size of the pupil decreases, that is pupil dilates. And if it goes to dim light, then dim light is the stimuli. Receptor same in the eyes, the brain, motor neurons, effector the same muscles, that is iris. In that case, only the response is different, and that in case of dim light, the size of the pupil increases. So by the same form, you can make the other examples, Rachi. So that is what the reflex arc is.